Nodada. I am a business owner. I'm so happy to be live with distinct leadership. Connecting with like-minded people is always one of the most exciting things, that can happen within our spaces. So I'm really excited for the conversation that we're going to have.
Thank you very much. Okay, so without such a too much of a time, we're going to let our speaker begin briefly, and then we're going to go to the question section. So, the floor is yours.
So I guess I should introduce myself first.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm South African born, Qaqamba Nodada. I'm not from the big cities. I'm from a very, very small town in remote South Africa. And, I was born in Kokstad, but I later moved to a place called Madatia where we actually have our businesses. So that's our business base. And I wasn't always a business owner. I'm actually professionally trained in pharmacy. So I am a pharmacist by profession, you know, where I where I worked for about 8 years. And during that work, I just had an itch, and that was the entrepreneurial itch. And being raised by entrepreneurial parents, it was only probably obvious that I was probably going to end up in this space. So during my time as a pharmacist, I actually established small little business baking cookies, right? Which escalated and sort of evolved into baking wedding cakes, birthday cakes, then wedding cakes, and then evolved into event management and doing and planning and coordinating the big weddings and the events, and concurrently establishing a business in the tombstone manufacturing space. So I've just really been in business. And when I got married to a serial entrepreneur as well. And everything just worked together. So now we sort of, participate in the value chain within the funeral industry, which sort of takes care of clients in their, deepest time of need, in their most saddest time, in a time where they really, really need assistance that is affordable, that is efficient, and we take part in that value chain. So, from what they need to carry out the funerals to anything from your tents, your chairs, your flowers, your caskets, your funeral service, and your tombstone. So we will cover that. So this is how then I end up as a business owner, right?
Wow,
And
wow.
basically, with if you've had one or two, three more, or even just one business, you find that sometimes you fail. And that's exactly what happened to me, where
Mm.
events management was concerned. So when that business started failing, I had to sort of take a step back and try and understand why, what was going on, and how I can be better in business, which was essentially the question of most South Africans or most Africans across the continent as what can we do to be better in business, right? Because we sort of put in a place where we don't have the option. So Africa is leading in terms of having the workforce, but we're not necessarily leading in terms of establishing and growing businesses to accommodate that workforce, right? So,
Sorry,
and
sorry. Before you continue, I'm so sorry. You said something. You said Africa is really leading in a space of building the workforce, but not really. I mean, I think I need to write that. So I really wanted to repeat that again so I could write that.
yeah, definitely. I mean, the research supports that. In years, to come, you'll find that Africa's median age is much lower than the rest of the world, which means that we're stronger in terms of, the quality of workforce that we produce for the world, right? But then in terms of building businesses, establishing great businesses, we aren't necessarily the leaders. So you can see across Africa who is, who takes the cake, for lack of a better phrase, when it comes to business. And it's not always our, local Africans, right? So, yes, we're starting the businesses, but we're not sustaining the businesses. And there's definitely something going on within that space of not being able to sustain the businesses. So, I was curious as to what exactly is that. And I stumbled upon probably one of the most important discoveries of my life, which was personal development, right? We can talk about sales, we can talk about marketing, we can talk about operations and being great at that. But if we don't focus on the most important part of the formula, which is the entrepreneur themselves, then the businesses won't be sustainable. And it sort of lays a ground for how the entrepreneur is supposed to build, and how the entrepreneur is supposed to fortify themselves and build on a foundation in order for them to be successful and sustainable.
Wow, wow, really. I mean, that was quite short, but very powerful, And I think this is a very big challenge we have in Africa. Well, we really proud about the whole workforce, but you made a very important point, which is the fact that we're really not really working towards establishing businesses and building structures. And I think that's what we're really lacking. And to begin the question section, I mean, and I think
Yeah.
there's a very important question I want to ask. And you made mention of how you began with, you were a trained pharmacist. I mean, the gap is it, I mean, it's really far from each other, but you're able to still, balance it. And the question I want to ask is this, what routine would you recommend, or can you follow to balance personal life and growing businesses?
Oh, this is a very important question, especially where women are concerned, but not leaving
Mm,
out the men as well. When we talk about balance from a women's perspective, I can't really speak through the lens of males, but I can speak through the lens of females. And when it comes to balancing, right, I have never really been able to balance, right? I'm very ambitious, I'm very driven, and it shows in how my home life is structured. So, what I could recommend is having a community of people that you trust to. So, you sort of run your home life like an entrepreneur. There are things that need to be done for you, right? So, how we handle the home and how we run the home is sort of like how you would as an entrepreneur. If the dishes need to be taken care of, if the laundry needs to be, you can outsource work so that you have time to do the things that you need to do, right? So the most important aspect in my life, where my home life is concerned, is my relationships, my marriage, my children, my family, and not necessarily the in between, the things that happen in between to sort of sustain that home living, right? So you basically have to choose. I'd say number one, choose what's important to you. And for me, it was the relationships that I had within my home life. I want to be a great wife, I want to be a great mom. How do I make sure that everything else is taken care of by other people, where I get to focus on those relationships, cultivating and growing those relationships, and still, you know, um, hit home runs in my business space. So it's a matter of also being okay with how you've structured your life and not judging yourself too harshly. Okay. Just to tell you a story, just last week I posted on my Instagram about how I had forgotten that my daughter had a character day. So they had to go to school in a character from a book they had read. Completely, off my mind, right? It went right out of my mind. Yet I was killing it at the office, right? I had everything down at the office, and I got home. I had forgotten about this. And I had to turn a curtain, I had to take a curtain and turn it into a dress for my Snow White little baby. And it came out so beautifully. But it just speaks to what I'm talking about balance, right? Everything else was taken care of. And when I got home, I knew that I didn't need to focus on, cooking or cleaning or doing. I needed to focus on making sure my daughter was happy with the dress that mommy was going to make for her. So, excuse me, balance is really all about knowing who needs to be in your community, outsourcing what you can outsource, and prioritizing relationship over everything.
Wow. Wow. So balance is all about, outsourcing on and then understanding how to, delegate. Wow. Man, that's really good. That's really, really good. And I think a very important aspect of business, and which is the next question I want to ask, and I think a lot of people watching right now really want an answer to that is how do you know it's the right time to scale your business?
Miracle, you're gonna have to say that
Hello,
again
can
for
you hear
me.
me?
Our network cut there a little bit.
Okay, so the question I was asked, how do you know when is the right time to scale your business?
To scale it,
Yes.
I would say it has to start with first understanding if your business is scalable, right?
Wow.
All right. You have to first understand if your business is scalable and understand if scaling is something that you want to do. Okay. So we live in Africa and excuse me, I've got a little bit of a flu. So when we talk about business in Africa, most of the youth are struggling to start the business. Most of the youth are struggling to grow the business. So you have to sort of understand if scaling is a priority for you, right? You know when to scale because you have a foundation of where you were going. So, as a personal development coach, what we do with clients, what I do with clients is try to get them to understand what is their why and what is their end goal, right? You can't scale if you never had the intention to scale to begin with. Okay. So when you come into business, you don't want to come into business with, I don't know, we'll see kind of mentality, right? What is my why and where am I going? If, for instance, right now I were to say I want to start a beauty brand, right? I have to think about the entirety of my dream and where is my beauty brand going, right? So if I say I want to start a beauty brand that is going to be sold to the biggest beauty brands in the world, let's say Estee Lauder, right? That already tells me from inception of business that this business is a business that I'm going to scale, right? And that is now a fundamental personal development principle, is knowing what it is that I am starting. Now, when to scale comes in once you understand and you have the knowledge of which phase of your business you are in now, right? You won't particularly know by yourself when you need to scale. That is why you are going to need mentoring. That is why you are going to need coaching. That is why you are going to need credentializing yourself and, sort of what's the word I'm looking for? When you want to root yourself into the business, right? You want to know, you want to sort of understand those people, your mentors and your coaches will sort of guide you to a place where they are teaching you. This is now when you scale your business. And they will guide you to the people who will help you scale your business and how to scale your business, right? So a lot of it has to do with the fact that our mindsets still need to shift a lot, right? Because we tend to think that success is not only linear, as in there should be no failures, but success is an individualistic task, and it's not. It really isn't.
Wow. Wow. This is really a great section. I mean, I'm really learning a lot right now, you know. And wow, I think this about your mindset here. So what mindset shift helps you recover when your business faces a setback?
Ooh, when the business faces a setback, um, that challenges are there to help me. They are not there to kill me or dishearten me, or I always think about life in general where challenges are concerned. You have to sort of shift your mindset in terms of seeing everything with gratitude, and even in a business space. If you are already grateful for this challenge, you can leverage the challenge for your very success by picking it apart and understanding what the challenge is here to teach you. Nothing is ever personal in this life or in business for that matter. It just means that when you face a challenge, when you face a setback, there is a something wrong with the strategy, so we need to take a step back and iterate the strategy. It's all about agility in this journey, right? You need to understand that you're going to need to come back to the plan, change the plan, move forward. It will probably fail. If it doesn't, great, right? So it's a constant cycle of iteration and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't. So challenges are for the journey, and challenges are for you. And that's one of the mindsets I was actually teaching about last week on my Instagram, is that we need to change the mindset around challenges, and we need to change the mindset around the business environment, right? I think you've also seen a lot of memes and a lot of, all of those things about how difficult business is, and how, this is the arena. We are warriors. We are here to fight, right? And in the battlefield, you're going to get a few scars or two, and that helps you strengthen your story. It helps you be a better leader. It helps you be a better storyteller, because there are people who are going to come after you. And just like you're doing now, they're going to ask questions. How do I do this? How do I, right? Nothing is new under the sun. So those who come after us, the principalities of law of success, tell us that they are probably going to go through similar things, and who else to teach them than the ones that went before them, right? So that is what we need to change.
Wow. Well, this is really nice, and I'm really grateful that we had you here, honestly. And the other question, which I believe is very important, is mentorship. It's mentorship. What advice do you have for finding or working with a mentor? And I think it's very important, mentorship when it comes to, as an Africans. What
Yeah.
advice would you give it finding and working with a mentor?
Do you know what? I think that first of all, before advice, change the mentality around community, right? We need a community to be able to succeed. Okay. And part of being in a community means finding people within that community who can essentially catapult us to our success. Mentors are there to guide. Mentors are there to help you, on the journey, and to fill the spaces of uncertainty, right? And what you don't know. So they're there to guide you, right? And I think one of the things that we still haven't grasped as Africans is that mentoring is not a free service, right? It should be an investment, because there are people who take their time to learn the frameworks that work for business owners in particular sectors, in overall business sector. There are people who take their time to make sure that they are experts in the field of mentoring, experts in the field of coaching, to be able to guide young entrepreneurs, you know? So we still have a mindset block that says if it's a personal expense, it can't be an investment, right? So if we change that to say my personal expense, and any expense that is meant to grow me is an investment to me as a brand, is an investment to me as a leader, is an investment to me as a person, and that all will show up in everything that I'm building. It'll show up in your business. It'll show up in your personal brand. It will show up. What you invest in where you are concerned will show up in the places that you're showing up in. For instance, it's a personal expense to get a degree, right? But at the end of it all, I'm a pharmacist who gets paid to be a pharmacist, right? It shows up in how I'm living my life. So mentorship should be an investment, right? Because it will show up in how you do everything. Just unmute yourself, Miracle.
Oh, so sorry, so sorry, so sorry. Thank you. I mean,
It's okay.
thank you so much. And I think the other subject is the subject of team. And the question is, how do you build a team, a strong team, and I think it's and then keep your company's culture intact. And I think that the role of culture in building a team. How do you keep the culture intact in the team building?
That is such a beautiful question. Thank you for that. And I'm going to answer it as best as a personal development coach can, right? So, one of the things that are important in your personal development journey is knowing and understanding yourself, right? Who are you and what are you good at? What are your skills? What are your strengths? What are your developmental areas? What are the opportunities that align to that? What are the threats that are there, right? From you being your best self and showing up as your best self, right? Once you take that framework and apply it to you and apply it to your business, you then understand how or who you want in your team, right? So if you understand that my strength is communication, then it's easy for you to say, I want a team member who's just as good as in communication, or I want a leader in my team who's good in a particular skill, right? In the hiring process, it gets very important to understand what are the developmental areas of your prospective employees or prospective team members, right? What are the opportunities, or what do they believe are the opportunities? What do they believe are the strengths to that? Once you use that framework all around, you start to create a strong team. And when you build a strong team from your developmental areas, you will see that where you lack as a leader, right, within the context of, let's say, small, medium business, you will have such a strong team, because where you lack as a leader, you have team members that are strong in those areas. So my story is, when I started to understand that my empathy, right? I'm quite empathetic towards people. My empathy was both great for an organizational culture because it fostered a culture of care and kindness, but it was also detrimental because it meant that um, discipline went unchecked. It meant that, I couldn't fire people on time, right? Because I felt bad. I was like, oh my word, how can I fire this person? But they're not showing up as their best self at work, right? So my strength then also was my developmental area. And what I did is I hired a HR practitioner and put them in that position and said, you get me the team. This is what I need. This is the kind of person I need. This needs to be their strengths. Find out what their weaknesses are so we can match them around the team that we need, right? And when it came to discipline and letting people go from the company, it became easier because that wasn't my job, and I could fully show up in my empathetic self, in my happy self, because I knew that there was systems in place to be able to undercut the detriment of who I am. I don't know if that's the proper phrase to use, but how I was showing up in that empathy, right? So I think when you start to understand yourself holistically, you will be able to understand, who do I need on my team? How do they need to show up? What are their skills? What are their strengths? Right? And use their weaknesses to leverage their weaknesses for your organizational success, right? So organizational culture has a lot to do with what you value as a leader in your space. So for instance, I value confidence. I value kindness. I value excellence. I value efficiency, right? And I needed to come up with a plan of actions that was to show that that is what we value as a company. So staff know that they need to be on time, not only for work, but for getting clients their products. Efficiency is the name of the game. Excellence is the name of the game. And one of the deciders of whether you're efficient or not is if you are either early or on time. So we needed to work on their aspect. We needed to train them. We needed to incentivize them for the great work that you're doing, if you're doing a great work, and discipline early when you have a mismatch of that. Right? Confidence, how you show up at work. I'm a big you know, a presence. What is your presence at work? Are you wearing the correct uniform? Are you presenting yourself in a professional way? Because we want our clients to be confident in us. So we need to look the part, right? So it's just about understanding those things and essentially infiltrating them into your company actions that will then show that if these are our values, how are we showing up to support our values?
Wow. And that was quite very detailed about culture, really. That was very detailed, and I really hope that someone really is going to actually have the second and rewatch this again. That's a very very detailed about building a culture
Yeah.
that stays intact. And we have two questions before we let you go. And the one before the last question is and I think a lot of people have challenges with this aspect, and which is, how do people turn side hustles into full-time enterprise without burning out?
Okay.
Without having to
You first need to differentiate if this is a side hustle or it's a business that can turn into a full-time business, right? Businesses are different. There are businesses that can definitely turn into side hustles. And remember, the one of the best places I say you can be generally as an African in these very trying times, you can put yourself in a position where you have capital all the time, every month, and that's having a job, right? You don't need to necessarily quit your job and become, this fire entrepreneur, right? And that's where side hustles come from. Yes, it's a side hustle, but if you're comfortable with your job and you love your job and you're comfortable with your side hustle and you are okay, you don't need to necessarily quit your job, right? It goes back to what we were talking about our why and where we want this to go. If you've probably had the conversation with yourself about, why am I doing this? Why am I starting a side hustle? Where do I see this in 10 years, right? Then you jumping from 9 to 5 to side hustle will be an intentional move. It won't be an out of the whim decision. It will be very much intentional because that was the plan 5 years ago. And when year 5 comes, we move with intentionality.
Wow. I don't know. I mean, so this is out of the questions I was prepared and some of the questions
Yeah.
people asked. So do you think that it takes an intelligent person to either build a business, start a business, and then grow a business? So let me
I
rephrase it. Let me rephrase it well so you probably could understand well. Do you
Okay.
really need to be smart to start a business or grow a business?
Wow. Okay. So you're bringing up something I read. There's an article I was reading about 2 weeks ago about multiple intelligences. I forget the author. I forgot his name. I forgot his name. But in the article, they talk about there being multiple intelligences, right? So you could they make reference to Picasso. They make reference to who was the piano guy? Mozart. They make reference to different people who had intelligences in different sectors, right? So when you ask that question, it immediately brings up to me that article, and I almost want to paste it in the context of business and what we're talking about. Everyone is gifted in life. Everyone has a set intelligence in life. You have to figure out, what is my intelligence, right? What is my gifting? And remember, we talked about the SWOT analysis. Who am I? What am I good at? Right? And then monetize what it is that you are good at. So it's not necessarily that it takes an intelligent person to start, grow, and sustain a business. It takes a person who understands their personal intelligence, their personal gifting, and takes the time to enter into community, takes the time to change their mindsets around money, power, community, knowledge, enhancing their skills, and finding ways to monetize that, and finding a community that can build that company, right? I hope I'm not being too philosophical and, you know, airy fairy, but it makes sense in this way, because I think that a lot of people count themselves out of being entrepreneurs, of being business owners, because they're like, I'm not intelligent in this one thing. Business needs you to understand what is needed by the community that I live in, my market. How can I inject my personal gifting and skills into what is needed? And how can I make money off of that? And the problem that we see is that we are all sort of running after a dream that we were sold. We were all sold the German machine dream. We were all sold a 5 million bedroom house. We were all sold, you have to sort of really critically analyze what your actual dream is and what success means to you in order to be okay with your personal intelligence, monetizing it to a particular degree and living essentially a happy life. And that's the formula for success. If you don't subscribe to success, having success being having a German machine, a 5 bedroom house, living in a particular neighborhood. What if success to you is having the ability and the freedom to, entertain your curiosity about life, entertain your curiosity about the world, entertain your curiosity about how people think? What if that is what success means to you, regardless of whether you stay in a 3 bedroom house and drive a Chinese machine, for instance, right? So I think that it doesn't take one particular intelligence to start, grow, and sustain a business. I think that once you understand what your personal intellect is, and everyone has this, learn how to monetize it and match it to the intrinsic original dream that you have for your life, you are on a pathway to success and possibly the happiest life you've probably ever lived.
Wow. Wow. That was really insightful. That was really, really insightful. And I don't know, I'm speechless right now because I'm really grateful that we had a speaker like you to speak, and then we have people. I'm always grateful when I feel like Africa is at a point where we need more of discussions like this, preparing us
Yeah,
for the future that we're experiencing, which we're not fully
yeah,
into it, but we're sowing a seed of having discussions like this, and then in having people like you in our generation, I think there's hope that we believe that we would really not just boast on the fact that we have a large form of workforce, but we would really know that we would build structures that would help
yeah.
business stand, and not to just stand for a while, but stand for a long time. But so thank you so much. I'm really grateful. We've come to the end of this section, but before we let you go, we want to ask you a last question before we let you go, and
Of
we
course.
want this to come from deep, deep inside of you, deep, deep, deep outside of you, and it's what's one piece of advice would you leave with every entrepreneur or business owner listening today from your experience?
I would probably say, um, honor your place of pure potentiality. Deepak Chopra writes a book about the 7 spiritual laws of success. And one of those spiritual laws is honoring the field or the place of pure potentiality. And that is to say that whatever dream that you have, whatever thing your mind can conjure up where you are in a position of leadership, where you are living a life that is filled with not only joy but success, lean into that. Lean into building the type of life that has you in a position where you are helping other people. Don't lean into helping other people when you haven't helped yourself first. We are seeing a growth in entrepreneurs or people who are not entrepreneurs, but who have the heart for people and who want to open NGOs and this, and the other, but don't necessarily have the knowledge, the know how to do it. And you see them being burnt out and you see them not knowing how to navigate the space because they're in a position where they're trying to help other people, but they too have nothing. Right? So, your place of pure potentiality is where you see yourself, where your happiness lies, where your joy lies, where are you most successful, and how are you going to get there? And that is the path of success. So I would really say to any entrepreneur listening, especially if you're a female, lean into yourself because everything good that comes into the world and into our businesses actually started from here, right? And when you can start to imagine something and you bring it to fruition, that is a position of power. right? So every entrepreneur needs to understand that, as cliche as it sounds, your dreams are actually valid, especially for us Africans. We are in such a good position because we have space to play. We just might not have the finances to play, but we definitely have the space to play.
Wow. I mean, this was look like a storytelling section, and then it was really nice. I want to say thank you very much. I want to say everyone who's also joined us, and I would also recommend that you follow. I'm trying hard to pronounce your name. Please help me pronounce your name. Please help me pronounce your name.
Qaqamba. So you have to click from just the roof of your mouth.
Ah, okay. Let's try. Let's try. Let's try. Let's try.
I always say you need to, before I can give you my nickname, you have to butcher my name first. Because in butchering
Okay.
my name, that's when you practice to get it right, right?
Okay.
And
Okay.
when we finally meet each other in person, you're going to need to say my name properly.
Perfect. I would. I would definitely do that. Definitely do that.
All
So,
right.
let me try now.
Yes.
Ah. Okay. So,
Don't worry. Don't worry about getting it wrong.
okay. That's fine. So, Kwakama, Kwakwambamba.
Go like this.
Ah. Okay. Kwamba. Kwamba.
Ka. So you're not pronouncing it with your with the back of your mouth. You pronounce it
Okay.
with your tongue, right? Put your tongue on the furthermost tip, right here by your two front
Okay.
teeth,
Okay.
right? And sort of suction your tongue out like yes, yes. Then just put it ma.
Ma.
Yes. You see?
Wow, but this is going to be an English class. I think it's going to be an English class. This is going to be an English class. But I want to say I'm grateful. I'm not just saying grateful because we have you here, but I'm grateful because we have people like you, and I'm always grateful. And I had to go check your profile, and like, oh wow, man, we had these people, and then I've not really invited her. So I told myself, we needed to have someone like her to speak, and I'm really grateful that for other upcoming opportunities that we could probably work together on to help other people. And
Definitely.
it's a quick structure to give out to other people as well too. And I'm saying
Yeah.
thank you once again, and everyone who's joined us. And I want you to follow her. So you can see the name. Let me not pronounce the name. So you can see the name on the screen. I'm just gonna you see the
Yes.
name there. So please follow on TikTok. It's very active on TikTok, Instagram. So yeah, QAMVA. I mean, so if you
MBA.
just yeah, exactly. So please search and then follow her. She gives out real content, and I think if you want to grow as an individual, you could reach out to her and then probably book a section with her, something like that, and then I think you'll be empowered. I think yeah. So thank you so much, ma'am. I'm really grateful. Really, really
Thank you,
grateful.
Miracle. It was such a pleasure. And please continue doing what you do.
Thank you.
I can't wait. I'm always saying, I probably can't wait for the next 5 years in our lives. But I'm thinking,
Yes.
God has been like, no, actually, how about next year? And you're like, oh my word, what?
Oh, but that's so
Right?
fast.
All right. So I'm really excited for your future. I'm excited
Thank you.
for, where you're going in life
Mm, mm,
and building consistency. You are definitely
mm,
building trust in your community, me being part of it. And I'm so happy that you're
mm.
part of my community.
Thank
And let's just work on our communities collectively to see if
you.
we as Africans can't bridge the gap between us and find our similarities and find our strengths together and how
Mm,
we can move Africa forward, man. Africa's so
mm,
beautiful
mm,
and just us as a collective. So yeah, I'm
mm.
really excited for your future.
Same here. I'm also excited too. I mean, for me to have said that, to have someone like you in Africa, I think it's very powerful. And then I'm really looking forward that we could do something bigger and better as well to help other people. So please, if you're watching this right now, I see a lot of people watching right now, and for those who are going to watch tomorrow, this night, or next tomorrow, or next year, or next few years, or in the future, I want you to check her out when you see. Thank you so much, mom. Thank you, everyone, as well.
Definitely. Bye, Miracle.
Okay,
Bye.
bye. Okay, let me see.